Hello, and welcome to LMU Roundtable Now. It's a show where we talk about issues on campus and the people who are the most inflected in these issues, the LMU student body. My name is Brandon McNeil. I'm a third-year sociology major, and I'm joined tonight, as always, by our panel of experts. All right, so over here we have, he's a sophomore, a business finance major with a minor in guitar. His name is John Thomas Landon. Welcome to the show, John.
Oh, thanks. Hi, Brandon.
Hey. And over here we have, he's a library science major, and his name is James Fox. Welcome to the show, James.
It's so good to be back, Brandon.
Great. All right, well, pack your bags because we're taking a trip on a time machine into the future. We're going to be talking about the many technological advances that scientists have been making and wonder what life will be like in the distant or even the near future. Now, guys, just a few years ago, iPods were something that were so futuristic you could only read about them in an H.G. Wells novel. But now they're as commonplace as forks or knives. So what do you guys think about the way that the future is going?
I think it's probably characteristic of the future that it is always coming and going forward, and that we can keep looking for new things that are just really repackaging old things, like the iPod. The example you gave is a lot like a record player in a box, like a smaller box. Who knows? Maybe they'll just stick it right in your brain one day, and you'll just think about songs you want to hear, and you'll start listening to them.
Your idea is pretty good, JT, because sometimes I know, for me at least, I know there's a song and I know kind of the way it goes, but I don't remember the name, and then I look for it on iTunes Store or whatever it's called, and I can't find the actual right song. So if it was in my brain, I could just sort of go, what, that song that goes do 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 do, you know, and then it would come in.
But then you have a problem, which is that, say that song that you're thinking, you know, that do-do-do, like, that could be a song that was covered by several different artists, and maybe you have all of the versions in the iPod in your brain.
I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I know that I myself am capable of thinking about many different things at the same time, and I think there could be a function similar to Apple Expose on the Macintosh computer, where every different version of the song could be playing at once, and I could simply choose among the many different songs playing in my head which is the correct version and choose to download that one.
Right. And if you can hear all of these different types of songs, that makes me think of how, you know, in the past, the only way that you could listen to music was, you know, in mono, and now they have stereo. So hopefully in the future, maybe there'll be, you know, one beyond that, where, you know, that you have like 3 or 4 or maybe even 6 channels.
7.2 surround sound with a bass right in your brain, really cranking the tunes. And the neighbors wouldn't complain anymore because the bass wouldn't rattle their kitchen.
It would only rattle your spine, but that's sort of what, you know, great rock and roll music is meant to do.
You could dance to it too, because you could feel the vibrations. Maybe it would animate your body.
Like in the way that if you're on iTunes, there's the waves that form that's like artwork along with the music. Yeah. Maybe your body could be a function of what the music is doing.
You could call it iGroove or iDance or iParty even.
If you think about it, the iPod is a really good example of how objects have gotten smaller. I mean, in the past, you would have a computer that was maybe the size of this room or even bigger, but now computers can be up to very small. Do you think that it's possible for things to get even smaller than they are now?
Wasn't there a mathematician or astronomer or somebody who said that there is a finite size to which current computer technology can reach?
But if you think about it, the human body is getting bigger and bigger. So if objects and technology keeps getting smaller, but we keep getting bigger, soon enough it's going to be like Jack and the Beanstalk, where we're the beanstalk and then the technology is Jack.
Or Gulliver's Travels. If you remember, in Gulliver's Travels, all the little people tie up the giant Gulliver, who is actually normal sized, but he's giant compared to them. And it's just horrible for him trying to keep track of all of them. So maybe there will be so many devices in our lives that we'll be tied down into this mechanical routine of just lifelessness by them.
I think what we really need to be concerned about is the future ending up like a different book altogether, which is George Orwell's 1984. At the time, it seemed like crazy science fiction, but now we're getting closer and closer. And with George Bush is kind of like Big Brother, and in some ways, I wonder if that book has already come true.
But if Hillary wins, then it would be Big Sister, right? And then it wouldn't be like the book. It would be something altogether new.
Or if like Obama wins, it could be Big Bro.
Yeah.
All right, well, now we're going to take to the street to find out what people like you think.
Before we actually do that, though, I'd like to first apologize because, unfortunately, the future isn't here yet, and we don't have battery-less microphones, and the microphones that I used had batteries in them, ones that were half full, so the audio is, well, you'll see, it's not so great. So I'm sorry about that, and I hope you can still get something from it.
All right, so with that in mind, let's go find out.
Hey, I'm JT Landon, and today I'll be asking you, the LMU student, what you think about the future and technology, and when it's coming and where it's coming from, and how you use it. So let's go find out. Okay, so I'm John Thomas Lennon. What's your name?
Gage Derringer.
Nice to meet you, Gage.
Pleasure.
So this week we're talking about the future and technologies that are coming down the pipes. So what do you look for when you think about the future?
Seriously, like, what do I look forward to? Well, I'm pretty excited that, like, the Lexus can park itself. I'm excited for when that's, like, a function in every car.
Do you think that's like a sign of things to come? Like you won't have to drive at all, you just
It'll be like
take...
Minority Report when he has his car that drives, or iRobot.
I was watching a movie where they had a telephone right in someone's brain and like an iPod too. Do you think that'll happen in the future?
It could happen. I don't know. Too personal. Technological.
Have radios like attached to people's heads so they can just, like iPods, people have them plugged in now. Do you think we'll just have them implanted?
That's a stupid thing. I wouldn't have an implant in the ear without they're going to be deaf.
Yeah. Maybe.
Now you're generating.
Thinking even farther in the future, do you think that the internet will even be needed at all, and maybe they'll invent something a lot better?
I guess. People talked about like a brain internet where people can connect neurologically with one another. Then you wouldn't have to type.
But then wouldn't file sharing like be a real big problem?
I'm not quite sure how you would file share on the neurological network.
Do you think maybe it'd be NeuroShare?
Yeah, kind of like a BitTorrent kind of thing, but like, yeah.
Napsterant, Stapster. So, do you think there's anything that we haven't thought of that's going to be invented?
Well, if I knew that, I think I'd be a billionaire right now.
Yeah.
I think I would have invented it.
If you had to guess, what would it be? What would you guess?
A teleportation device. It would completely eliminate the Segway and the car because we wouldn't need them. We'd just go from place to place.
What would you call this device?
Something in that regard.
Yeah. Well, then everyone could get sued.
Yeah, you could be sued, I guess, like for intellectual property violations if you're thinking you don't own access to.
But do you think then the government could look in your mind and know if, I don't know, if maybe you want to, even for small crimes, like maybe you were really hungry and you saw a bagel in a window and you're like, hey, I ought to eat that. And then they would just like, he's going to steal that bagel and then they throw him in jail. I think that's a genuine concern. You're not very hopeful about the future.
Hey everybody. This is John Thomas Landon, and I'm really sorry that the audio has been messing up, and I'm afraid I'm gonna have to stop this man on the street early. So, back to you in the studio.
All right, great. Well, thank you, JT.
You're welcome. Again, sorry.
Well, one thing that we learned from that, above anything else, is that everybody has different ideas about what the future is going to bring.
If you think not that far back to a little film known as The Matrix, maybe we don't have evil computers controlling us, but we control them and tell them to give us our own virtual futures where things happen that we like.
What if, you or somebody else is able to hack into somebody else's VR world and create some kind of living nightmare for them?
Kind of why you would need the VR police, right? So that they could stop the hackers and crackers.
It takes us back to the question: does the internet need to be regulated? I mean, there's stamps on mails, but there aren't stamps on emails.
Well, I think one of the big problems that has already reared its ugly head is the chat rooms where big men pretend to be little girls. If they had to buy stamps for all of their messages, they wouldn't do it as much.
And then that would stop them probably from creating a living nightmare for somebody on the computer.
I think in that issue, there's something that is kind of overlooked a little bit, which is that everyone talks about, grown men impersonating little children, but nobody ever talks about the other way around, which occurs many, many, many times as well every day.
It's good you brought that up because I experienced that actually. I was on the Star Wars chat forum online, and I was arguing with who I thought was a contemporary, one of my peers, about episode 2. But turns out this person had far less knowledge than I thought, and the Ewoks, I was right about them, and they finally admitted, I'm a little girl.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience recently in a political chat room. Supporters of Senator John McCain discussing his campaign, and I was discussing, how to get out the vote and get people on board and widen our base and everything, and it seemed that the conversation was going fine and was very productive, but then at the end it was just a child I was speaking with, and as I looked back, they had basically just been parroting back to me everything I had been saying.
It's sort of like the old thing of people getting fake IDs to be able to buy alcohol. If you don't allow that, then maybe you shouldn't allow people to discuss politics or Star Wars.
And in the future, when this becomes a virtual environment where I don't just type on a chat room, I go to a chat room, there has to be a very strict carding process because that's a long waste of my time trying to correct somebody who is very young and wasn't even there when episode 2 came out.
Now, the idea of a chat room being an actual room, do you think that we would need, sanitation and bathrooms, or how we have the recycle bin on the computer? Would you also need bins like that in the chat room?
Well, I think if virtual reality is virtually reality, you can't just leave some of the unpleasantries of the real world out of there. If you got to poop in the real world, you got to poop here in this room too.
The whole 9 yards, you might say.
Which leads you to wonder, would you choose when you poop? Would it be like a way to get out of conversations that you don't want to be in? You're like, excuse me, I have to go poop now. I can't talk to you about your silly ideas. What if an Ewok is?
I know sometimes I, even in real life, will pretend to go to the bathroom when I simply want to get out of some kind of situation.
I think all this really puts females at an unfair advantage because whereas you or I or even you could only say, I have to go number 1 or I need to go number 2. Girls have a number 3, and if they're in a conversation they don't want to be in, they can say, excuse me, it's my time of the month, and I'm ovulating.
That brings up an interesting thought in my brain. Where can women their virtual personas have virtual children if they can have a number 3?
Well, what if you are a man and you have a female avatar, and you want your female avatar to be able to have cyber children through cyber sex with another cyber citizen? Could you do that?
I would like to think that we would be able to, because as JT said, a lot of the unpleasantries of the real world would still be there, and I think we can all agree that giving birth is pretty unpleasant.
Now, what if two cyber people, netizens, have their cyber relations and one or both of them becomes pregnant? They decide that they don't want to keep the baby. Should there be a cyber abortion process which is possible, and should it be legal?
Well, I think there's going to be so much disk space in the future. Just throw them on a backup disk. And when someone wants them, hey, got a baby.
You could even just throw it on a flash drive and just keep it in your pocket.
For when maybe you're financially stable enough to support one.
All right, well, guys, thanks for being here. And if you'd like to learn more about the show, email us at lmuroundtablenow@gmail.com. So if you want to know what's going on the campus, then pull up a seat at the table. Bye. This was a really good show this time. I thought we really covered a lot of topics. I thought there were were you actually, yeah, no, I understand. That makes sense. I would, if in the pantheon of these episodes, I would probably give it, maybe like a C or maybe like an A.